Hello, welcome back. I am so excited to smash this video out. Last one for the year. I'm going to be talking about, can you guess, goals for 2022. So I've got my hat on to remind myself to stop taking life so seriously. I've got the blinds closed, which you might think is odd, but it's I think 32 degrees here where I am on the coast just outside Melbourne, and it's really hot. So let's get through this and see if I can not ramble for half an hour, but let's see how we go. So my goals for 2022, if you can read that, are the first one, avoid mental breakdowns. The second one, finish 100 nonfiction books. Finish is the key word there. And then number 3, interview 3 audience millionaires. So I will explain what I mean by that when I get there. Let's start with number 1. So I've talked a little bit on this channel about my experience with depression and the journey from recovery of that, and as I'm starting this gap year, which is meant to be fun, but somehow because it's me and I suffer from massive perfectionism and all these things, I managed to end up stressing myself out over the tiniest things and spiraling into like depressive periods, as I'm sure is familiar to many people. So my main goal for 2022 is to look after my mental health. So that means meditating every day, but not as a chore. Like I tend to turn things into a chore, and like then if I don't do it, it's like I'm a failure, and that makes it worse. So it's like not with that attitude. But yeah, meditating, sunlight, doing things like I'm here at the beach, going for a swim in the ocean, enjoying it, and just not thinking and stressing constantly. What else? Exercising, eating well, sleeping properly, all these things. So when I'm kind of in this year, it's like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? Am I on track? What am I supposed to be doing? What's the point of everything? Like, that's where the thoughts go. It's like, okay, my number 1 goal for this year was to not have mental breakdowns. So it's like, this kind of thinking is what leads me to feeling very miserable, and then like ultimately spending days just feeling rubbish. So it's like, yeah, I'm not trying to do that. So how do I avoid that? Okay, why don't I just go for a walk with a friend and stop stressing, or go and sit and have a coffee and enjoy it. So that's my first goal, which, I mean, it's already stressing me out thinking about it. Just kidding, it's not. Goal, don't be stressed. So then the second one is what this channel is all about, the non-fiction books. Finish is the key word. I said finish 100 non-fiction books because, as I previously confessed, I have this habit of starting books and putting them down. So in this pile here, I actually have 3 books that I've already started. So the first is Atomic Habits. I have read, 85 pages. So when I finish this book, that will count as 1. Some people might think that's cheating, but you know what? These are my goals and my rules, and I can do whatever I want. And that is the rule I'm setting. So when I finish this book, it's number 1. Because do you know what would happen if I didn't count that as 1? Then I would say, okay, it's a waste of time reading this book because it's not contributing to the 100, so I'm not going to read it until next year, and that would just be stupid. I really want to finish this book. I think it's really going to help me in actually achieving these goals. So because it's all about habits and how tiny changes can have remarkable results. It's literally what it says on the cover. So hopefully I finish this week, and then I can do a video on it next week. So look out for that. Another one that I've started, I started both of these last week. 2 at a time. Who knows why? So I'm up to page 34 of this. This is have I talked about this before? Oh no, I did a TikTok on this. I'm learning how to use TikTok. No, sorry, I did a TikTok on reading out my favorite passage from her other book, Girl, Woman, Other. So from her book that won the Man Booker Prize. And this is her biography. So her autobiography or memoir, I guess. So it's not, so this is nonfiction. Her other book is a novel, so it's fiction. Importantly, I said 100 nonfiction books, so if I read any novels this year, they're not going to count. But this book is, so Bernardine Evaristo was the first Black woman to win the Booker Prize for that book, Girl, Woman, Other. And that was in 2019. And I picked up a signed copy of this on my last night in London before I came back for my visit to Melbourne. And I think that's really cool that I have a signed copy. Anyway, I will try and finish this as well, and then will I do a video on it? I don't know. Let's see. Probably at some point. This I've already read, so even though this is one that I would love to reread like every couple of years, along with, I said that about How Do You Measure Your Life, this as well, and Siddhartha, a book by Hermann Hesse, which won the Nobel Prize for Literature like a very long time ago. These three books are ones I would love to keep reading. Will I get time to do that this year? Not sure. But so I don't think rereads count in the 100 books. I'm just making that rule up now. But I love reading random passages. Actually, my second TikTok was on a passage from this book that I loved. So I will definitely do a video on this at some point, but probably won't count in the 100 books. This I just did a video on yesterday. That's finished. That does not count. Silk Road. The Silk Road is the one famously that I was starting my 100 books on. I will finish this. I'm a quarter of the way through. That will count in the 100 books when I get to it. I think I need a bit of momentum. This is taking me a while to get through, as I explained in another video, because I really like understanding every word that's written and learning all the place names. And like if I flick to a random page, it's talking about the Caspian, and it's like I will love to pull out the map and like remind myself exactly where the Caspian is. Or it's talking about Sir Hugh Willoughby, and I will just stop reading and Google like who was Sir Willoughby. And so it takes me a long time to get through, whereas smashing these two out next week I think will be a great way to build up momentum. So I'm feeling good about, because basically 100 nonfiction books in a year is kind of 2 a week, right? So with a little bit of leeway. So I'd love to get moving pretty quickly, like stick to 2 a week in the first few weeks. This I think will come, maybe this will come up week 2. This is my brother's copy, so I do need to finish it before I go back to the UK in a few weeks. So, and this I think will probably help me with the Silk Roads, because it has all the maps in it, and it's explaining basically. Let me just read from the back. If you've ever wondered why Putin is so obsessed with Crimea, why the USA was destined to become a global superpower, or why China's power base continues to expand ever outwards, the answers are all here. So, but I think it's like quite simplified. This is kind of a big non-fiction bestseller, which kind of means it's written for a very broad audience, which means someone like me who's never studied history in a very academic way before. So yeah, there's that. And then this I have read, and I'll definitely do a video on that because I find this very interesting. The Tattoo of Auschwitz. Is this actually non-fiction? It's more like historical fiction. But if you don't know about the controversy around this, please look out for my video on that, because I've read quite a couple of books on Auschwitz now. Quite a couple, that's not a phrase, but you know what I mean. And I visited Auschwitz as well, and you can see at Auschwitz they sell like all the many different books that have been written on Auschwitz. One which I'll definitely talk about is called Last of Auschwitz, which is the only full book written within the camp by a Dutch doctor, which was only recently translated to English. So, which I just find so interesting. So look out for a video on that as well. But on this one, regarding the controversy, this is written by an Australian woman, Heather Morris. You've probably seen it everywhere in airports. She also wrote Chilka's Journey, I think it's called, which I've also read. It's very easy to read and a beautiful love story, but there's controversy because she doesn't have all the facts right. And even though she did interview Lael Sokolov, who was in Australia, and he gave his story to this woman, I feel like I'm just giving away the whole video now. Whatever, I'll do another video on it. But it's kind of, there's controversy because it's like, he's the tattooist, but they get the number, the actual tattoo that they're given when they arrive. There are public records on what the number tattooed would have been for people in this book, but she's used a different number, and it's kind of like, why are you getting basic things wrong? And that can be harmful because people are already trying to deny the Holocaust happened, and when you say things that aren't true but put them under the idea that they are true, it's like feeds. I don't think what I'm saying is making sense. I think hot take here. This is the argument I use for Meghan Markle, which people, wow, this video is about to get so controversial. But when she, that's very divisive, right? A lot of people do not like her at all, and then a lot of people like, she is a champion, whatever, right? But my argument is, because I talk about mental health, right? She talked about mental health. When it's very difficult to talk about mental health. It's super awkward. Even in this video, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm announcing to the world my number one goal is avoid mental breakdowns. But she, I really don't know how I got onto Meghan Markle, but anyway, she talked in that interview with Oprah about her mental health, which absolutely you need. If someone is speaking about their mental health, like, we need to believe them. No one else can tell what goes on in someone's mind. And if they're saying that they experience suicidal thoughts, like, that's so critical to take that person seriously. But in the same interview, she said some things that were not true, which is like, whoa, controversial. I'm saying this, but I'll just give a simple example. She said that she was married 3 days before by the Archbishop of Canterbury, who then came out to say this absolutely didn't happen because that would have been against the law in the UK because you need witnesses and you can't. But, whether that's a misunderstanding, like she didn't know that maybe she thought they were married, but it was actually just a rehearsal. Like, definitely they had a rehearsal. And then maybe she thought the rehearsal was actually the wedding when he had to clarify it wasn't. But I don't know why I'm relating this, and I feel like now I'm going to be criticized by comparing these things. I'm not comparing them. I'm just saying it's an example of, if you're talking about something very serious, like suicide, in her case, you should make sure to be taken seriously, you should make sure you get the facts right on something else as serious as them being married in secret, which then had to be clarified that wasn't true. That's what my argument is, right? And so, in a similar vein, and I'm not saying that at all similar, that just popped into my head. Please don't shoot me. I'm not comparing the Holocaust to Meghan Markle. But when you're talking about something as serious as the Holocaust, that happened and millions of people were murdered, specifically 6 million Jewish people, if you write a book about it and it's seen as a bit, you're just saying things that aren't necessarily what actually happened, but you're selling it as a true thing, it can be very dangerous, right? Because then people who are trying to deny history can come and say, like, see, this is all false. I don't even know if that makes sense. I have no idea how this just turned into a very controversial video. Hopefully it's not. But this is what I'm trying to learn about the world, right? And I'm trying to learn through reading books and understanding these things more. I listened to a podcast that explained that, that a Jewish friend of mine sent to me about the controversy of the tattooist of Auschwitz. Maybe some people think that's not a problem, in which case I'd be interested to hear your views on that as well. So please let me know if you think what I'm saying is just totally nonsensical, because I'm trying to learn, which is what all this whole channel's about. And the only reason I have this book here is because I was gathering random books from the vicinity. The rest of these piled, the English Patient, that's actually fiction, so that wouldn't make the list. And then there's a few biographies down here, which I have just grabbed. One on Angela Merkel. So it's like that's interesting, for example, to read a book on Angela Merkel, but it's like, then you have to be careful about who's written it, what their motive is, where they're coming from. Are they the best person to have written it? For example, I had the video on one of Churchill's biography by Andrew Roberts. There's also a biography of Churchill by Boris Johnson, which I think I'd be interested to read. I would be interested to read. I don't know if it will make it into this year's 100, but apparently it's kind of Boris Johnson just talking about himself and how great he is and comparing himself to Churchill. So it's like every biography you read, you have to be careful about who's written it and why. And yeah, I guess that is kind of what this channel's all about as well. It's like critical thinking. How do you cut through this and understand the biases of where people come from? Dark Emu is another one that just came to mind when I posted one of my first videos. I had some books in the background, which again I just gathered from around the house, not necessarily my books. And that book, people sent comments saying, wow, like, I'm scared to hear you talk about that. That's what one person said, and a couple of other people said, yeah, that book's fiction. But that book has been really controversial. It's an Australian book about the Indigenous people in Australia, and it has been highly criticised for, I don't know much about it, I just know it's been highly criticised because it says things that other anthropologists have said are not true. So basically, I think there's been a whole other book written explaining like all the things that are wrong with this book. And so I find it really interesting, like, what's the motive of a person to misrepresent facts? Did they know they were misrepresenting facts? That's kind of the thing with Meghan Markle, like, genuinely, maybe she didn't know. I don't really know. I was just kind of saying my perspective, which I think is reasonable. In this case with Heather Morris, I don't think there's any malicious intent. In fact, I think she's trying to bring awareness to the atrocities of Auschwitz, but she's trying to sell a lot of books, which she did, presumably. I don't know, like, I haven't met her. That would be interesting to meet her, actually, and to discuss what she thinks about these things, which actually comes to my third goal, which is interview 3 audience millionaires. What do I mean by audience millionaires? I once read this thing about how so many people strive to be billionaires in terms of monetary value. And it's like, why don't you strive to be a billionaire in terms of influencing 1 billion people, or giving aid to 1 billion people through some charity, or saving, being a time billionaire, for example, like inventing something that saves billions of minutes of people's time or something like that. And then that So then that's where I decided to use the phrase audience millionaire. So I want to interview I'm going to start a podcast once I kind of get settled back in London and whatever. I will start a podcast, which I will share on here as well. And I am going to interview people, experts, ideally like a lot of these authors, and then other various people who I think are really interesting and who have something valuable to share with an audience. And so my goal for myself, which will probably be more in the second half of 2022, is to have 3 people on there who are audience millionaires. And by that, I still haven't defined that term. I mean, people who have reached an audience of 1 million. So either they've sold 1 million copies of a book, which, Tattoo of Auschwitz would have definitely sold over 1 million copies. I am pretty confident. Or they have a podcast with 1 million viewers, or, whatever it is. So that's my third ambitious goal on this list. So watch out for that. And I think after that whole ramble, which God knows what I've actually said and whether I should be scared of putting it on the internet or not, I don't know. I'm just trying. I know, like, you need to be very sensitive talking about the Holocaust, but I'm also thinking, like, people have very strong views about Meghan Markle, so I'm worried a mob is going to come after me. I don't think I really said anything like expressing a view either way about her. Anyway, that is, I think, time to wrap up before I continue putting my foot in my mouth. So, and yeah, that's actually interesting because a mob coming after me would be hard to avoid mental breakdowns. So I think that's why I said I just had it as avoid mental breakdowns rather than like don't have any mental breakdowns, which then if I did have one, it would be like you failed, which is not helpful, which then you then spiral. So it's just avoid. And so a way to avoid that is, and I can probably learn if a mob ever comes after me, God forbid, like, why am I even worrying about this now when I have like 37 subscribers or whatever? But just for future preparation, I think it's to learn from people who have had mobs come after them, which has been really, really tough. And I think it's basically like switching your phone off, like not being constantly on Twitter or reading the YouTube comments or whatever it is, but just there are strategies. So hopefully that never happens to me, but if it does, I will be implementing strategies to avoid that having a massive impact on me. Anyway, time to start rambling, to finish up 2021, what a bizarre year, and to strap in for 2022, which I'm sure will be another crazy year. But I will be reading lots of books throughout all the craziness. So see you back here for some more videos on books and hopefully not so many random hot takes. Happy New Year, everyone.